Oh, we jumped to 5 people already. Hello, everybody. I'm just setting up some resources. Hello, Sergey. Is Lorraine with you too? So we'll give it a minute or two just to get some people on, and then we'll get started. Hello, Christine. Okay, so welcome everybody who is not in the chat. So maybe you don't have because I see more people in the number that I have than I have people in the chat. So welcome. Oh, Dave, welcome. And anybody else I don't see? Greetings from the Mojave Desert. Sounds good. At least at night anyway. I don't know about today. Oh, from Argentina. Wonderful. Leandro. Very good. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband is from Peru. So I have some, and I've been down to South America. I've been down to Peru. I quite like it down there. And I love to encourage and support my South American friends who are becoming Buddhists. Slowly learning Spanish, which should work for everybody except for Brazil. All right. Okay. Wow. Okay. We got ready for the Palooza. I love it, Adriana. What is? There's cats in the Palooza? I don't know about the cats. All right. So some of you aren't on our Discord, Sangha. So you might not be familiar that every Uposatha, today is an Uposatha. And so what the main, at least for the first half of Dhammapalooza, the main focus is going to be on Uposatha. And what, for some people who are new,
Maybe you don't know what Uposatha is, so I'll do a little explaining of that. And then I'll explain to you about our online community on Discord and what we do. So Uposatha is simply the new moon or the full moon days, right? So in ancient India, there was it wasn't a sun calendar, it was a moon calendar, right? So the full moon and the new moon were very important, auspicious days. And this has, and since Buddhism kind of was born within that milieu, the Uposatha has become a very important day. Like for instance, in Buddhism, there's a holiday of Vesak, right? Which is a holiday that was created because it celebrated the birth, the awakening, and the passing away, the final extinguishment of the Buddha, which was all on a full moon night in March. Or May, sorry, May. So this is why the full moon day of May is called the Vesak, right? So the way tradition has come down, like if you come from like a Christian or a Catholic background, or a Jewish, or I'm not sure it's the same thing with in Islam, but the idea of the Sabbath, right? Like the Sabbath is like kind of like a rest day, like it's a one day, a special day a week. But in Buddhism, it's the Uposatha is actually the opposite. It's the day that by tradition that Buddhist practitioners take on extra precepts, right? That they practice further ascetic practices, that they practice their meditation more, right? These kind of things. So that's essentially what the Uposatha is today. It's a special for monastics. It's more important because for monastics, every Uposatha, the monks, in a community come together, and they, if there's enough monks, there has to be at least 4. If there's at least 4 monks, then they chant the Patimokkha, the monks' rules, right? And then they do their confessions and things like that. So there's lots of special activities surrounding the Uposatha. And well, I see there's some questions. Let me get to those questions a little bit later. But I won't miss any questions. So what we do on our online community is we have an Uposatha session every 2 weeks, which is we come together in voice. Usually I will give, and we go through each Uposatha is focused on one aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. All right, so today is Samyuta, which is right speech. And so usually what we'll do is I'll give a little introduction and talk about right speech, and then we'll go into like a community discussion of how we practice right speech in our lives, and our successes and our failures, and how hard it is, and all these kind of things. So that's what I think we can do for at least the first half of Dhammapalooza. But the first thing I want to do is, because since we start out with the chanting, I actually want to chant the Noble Eightfold Path. So let's do that first. If you have the Maggaseka chanting book, I got to prepare. I got to prepare my voice for the chanting. If you're using the Maggaseka, the new chanting book that we put out, if you're in the table of contents, it's the first one under short suttas. No rest for the Buddhists. Yeah. All right. Yeah, actually, I have the link to the book, so I can let me post the link. There it is. So for those of you who haven't heard about the Chanting Book, essentially what the Chanting Book is an amalgamation of chants from various very famous and well-used chanting books like the Bhavana Vandana, the Abhayagiri Chanting Book, and also from suttas, from the suttas like the Majjhima Nikaya, the Anguttara Nikaya, etc. And so this is a book that I decided to put together because none of these chanting books that are PDFs are highly hyperlinked. So they're really kind of hard to use and they're a pain to go through. But these are extremely hyperlinked, so you can get to places real quick. Oh, Reed. Reed is talking about my morning sessions. Well, it's the thought that it's your intention that counted, Reed. That's right. Okay. You know what? Since Maher, I'll give you a real quick answer. The real quick answer is that diabetes does not preclude you from being a monastic. And there are allowances for having things like for your blood sugar. You'd have to, whatever place you want to ordain, you'd have to go and talk to them about it. It's not a big deal. Diabetes is a fairly well-known, issue in terms of being a monastic. So wherever place you'd want to ordain, you'd have to talk to them about it and how they deal with it. So that question is answered. Meher. Oh, an Egyptian living in Chicago. We actually I'm actually friends with an Egyptian in Egypt too on Facebook. Buddhist. It's amazing where Buddhists or people interested in Buddhism can be all over the world and also far-flung places. It's really neat. Okay, so let's do the chanting. Let's get started so that we can move forward here. So this is the Aryo Atangiko Maggo. And for those of you who've never heard what I'm going to do before, this is chanting in the ancient Pali language. So I'm going to chant in the Pali and then we're going to do it in the English. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Ayankosa majjima patipada tathagatena abhisambuddha chakku karani jnana karani upasamaya abhinyaya sambodhaya nibbannaya samvattati. Ayang eva aryo atangiko maggo sammaditi dukke jnanang dukkha samudaye jnanang dukkha nirodhe jnanang dukkha nirodha gamaniya patipadaya jnanang samma sankappo nekkama sankappo avyapada sankappo avihingsa sankappo samma vacha musavada veramani pisunaya vachaya veramani parusaya vachaya veramani sampappalapa veramani samma kammanto panatipata veramani adinnadana veramani kame sumichachara veramani samma ajivo Miccha ajivang pahaya samma ajivena jivakang kapeti samma vayamo samvarapadanang anupanang papakanang akusalanang dhammanang anupadaya chandatang janeti vayamati viryang arabbati tang paggahanati padanati Pahanapadanang Upananang Papakanang Akusalanang Dhammanang Panahaya Chandang Janeti Vayamati Viryang Arabbati Chittang Paggahanati Padanati Bhavanapadanang Anupanang Kusalanang Dhammanang Upadaya Chandang Janeti Vayamati Viryang Arabbati Chittang Paggahanati Padahati Anurakanapadanang Upananang Kusalanang Dhammanang Tittiya Asammosaya Bihuya Bhavayaya Vipulaya Bhavanaya Paripuraya Chandang Janeti Vayamati Viryang Arabbati Chittang Paganati Padahati Samma Sati Kaye Kaya Nupassi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanasam Vedanasu Vedananu Passi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanasam Chitte Chittanu Passi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanasam Dhammesu dhammanu passi viharati atapi sampajano satima vinaya loke abhijja domanasang samma samadhi viviccheva kammehi viviccha akusalehi dhammehi savitakang savicharang viveka jam piti sukang patamajang upasampaja viharati Vitakka vicharanang vupasama ajatang sampassadanang chetaso ekodibhavang avitakkang avicharang samadhijanang piti sukang dutiya janang upasambhaji viharati Pitya cha viraga upekka kocha viharati Satocha sampajano sukancha kayena patisamvedeti yantang arya acchikanti upekkako satima sukha vihariti tatya janang upasambhajji viharati sukhassa chapahana dukhassa chapahana bubbeva somanassa domanassanang Attangama adukkang asukang upekka sati parisuddhing chattuja janang upasambhajja viharati. All right, friends. That is the Pali. Just checking on. All right, Dave. Have a good dinner. So let's see here. Okay, so now we'll do the English. This is the middle way, awakened to by the perfected one, which gives rise to vision and knowledge, which leads to peace, wisdom, enlightenment, and nibbana, the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view of suffering, of its origin, of its cessation, of the way leading to the cessation of suffering, to the Four Noble Truths. Right intention of renunciation, free from craving, of goodwill, free from aversion, of compassion, free from cruelty. Right speech, abstaining from false speech, abstaining from malicious speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from useless speech. 4. Right action, abstaining from taking life, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sensual misconduct. Right livelihood, giving up wrong livelihood, earning one's living by a right form of livelihood. Right effort, determination to prevent unarisen evil, unwholesome states of mind from arising, by making effort, arousing energy, applying mind, and striving. Determination to abandon evil, unwholesome states of mind that have already arisen by making effort, arousing energy, applying mind, and striving. Determination to develop wholesome mental states that have not yet arisen by making effort, arousing energy, applying mind, and striving. Determination to maintain and perfect wholesome mental qualities, mental states already arisen, and not to allow them to disappear, but to bring them to growth, to maturity, and to the full perfection of development by making effort, arousing energy, applying mind, and striving. Right mindfulness. One dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having subdued longing and grief for the world. One dwells contemplating feeling and feelings, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having subdued longing and grief for the world. One dwells contemplating mind and mind, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having subdued longing and grief for the world. One dwells contemplating phenomena in phenomena, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having subdued longing and grief for the world. Right concentration. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states of mind, one enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied thought and sustained thought, with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. With the subsiding of applied thought and sustained thought, one enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is without applied thought and sustained thought, is filled with rapture and bliss born of concentration. With the fading away of rapture, one dwells in equanimity, mindful and discerning, and one experiences in one's own person that bliss of which the noble ones say, happily lives one who is equanimous and mindful. Thus one enters and dwells in the third jhana. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, one enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, purity of mindfulness and equanimity. All right, so that is the end of our traditional first chanting. Every Dhammapalooza, we start out with doing some chanting. And so let's continue with our Uposatha. So today is right speech, Samyuta, right? Samyuta is split into 4 types. And I've typed them in here. Abstaining from false speech, Uposatha. It means literally not saying what is false, right? So we abstain from saying what is false. Pisunaya, malicious speech or divisive speech. So this would be speech that tries to divide one person from another. Right? The Buddha literally describes it as you go over to this person and you hear what they say, and then you go over to that person and say what this person says so that you can divide these two people, right? So that's pisunaya. That's what that is not. So what this is all wrong speech, right? So right speech is abstaining from these things, right? So then there's parusaya, which is abusive speech that is like very harsh, very abrasive words, abrasive speech that's not pleasant to others. And then the last one is sampapalapa. Sampapalapa is about blah blah speech, speech that is useless, speech that is not conducive to any skillfulness, that is not conducive to any goodness. Right? This would be like water cooler speech. The Buddha would call it the speech of the well. Like when people in the old days, ancient times, would go to the well to get their water. And just like in modern times, we go to the water cooler, right? And we start yapping with everybody else. In the ancient times, you go to the well and you start yapping with everybody at the well. Oh, what's going on today? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Right? So that's sampapalapa. And this is, sampapalapa, blah, 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 blah. So right speech is obviously all about how we use our speech and the intentions behind our speech, right? We try to, if we're practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, if we're practicing right speech, then we're trying to have our speech be truthful. We're trying to have our speech be unifying, right? Instead of divisive, instead of dividing, having our speech be unifying, right? Instead of having our speech be abrasive, we're trying to have our speech be gentle and calming and, pleasant to the ear. And to have our speech have meaning, have purpose. There's a reason why I'm saying this, right? Not just to fill time or to, fill in the silence or anything like that. Because if we really start to examine our speech and pay attention to other people's speech, most of the time it's wrong speech. Right? Most of the time, it's not really conducive to any kind of skillfulness, any kind of benefit. Right? Most of the time, our speech is often wrapped up in various negative mind states and emotions and things like that. Right? Very rarely do we take time, do we have mindfulness with our speech. That's what's important, right? If any of you have ever done any kind of work, like physical work, creating things or whatever, there's a motto that says, measure twice, cut once, right? Cutting wood or whatever you need to cut. And so my motto is think twice, speak once, or think twice, act once. So what this motto is basically saying is reflect before you act. Reflect before you speak. Is this speech beneficial, right? Is this really worth saying, right? Even, is this the right time to say it? Let me see if I can get you to right here. Okay. Let's see how this is going to paste. It's too many words. Oh, well. So this is the Buddha saying in Anguttara Nikaya 5.1.198, monks, a statement endowed with 5 factors is well spoken, not ill spoken. It is blameless and unfaulted by knowledgeable people. Which 5? Right? It is spoken at the right time. It is spoken in truth. It is spoken affectionately. It is spoken beneficially. It is spoken with a mind of goodwill. Right? So the Buddha is giving us a roadmap. The Buddha is giving us this is right speech. This is how you should try to strive to speak. Not easy, but nothing in the path is it? If you've been following the path long enough, you know it's not easy. All right. I'll give you another thing here in the chat. One of the great things about these live streams is that people can watch them later and they can also see the chat. That's so good. So people can actually see if I post something. I'll read, you're heading out? All right. Have a good night. It's too long. Unfortunately, it's like Twitter or something. It only allows you to do 200 things. Okay. All right. This is only just a paragraph even. They need to up their game here. All right. In the case of words, which the Tathagata, so this is the Buddha talking about himself. So the Tathagata, if you read the sutras and you see the Tathagata, the Buddha is essentially, talking about himself, I guess what you would say in the third person, right? In the case of words that the Tathagata knows to be factual, true, beneficial, and endearing and agreeable to others, he has a sense of the proper time for saying them. Why is that? Because the Tathagata has sympathy for living beings, right? So we want to try to do our best to speak in ways that are beneficial to yourself and others. Speak in ways that are skillful, right? Not speak in ways that are harmful. And this is not easy, which is why now we're going to open it up to the community. This is the time where we can talk about right speech. How maybe you can, if you'd like to share times where you've tried to practice right speech and it went well or it didn't go well, or maybe you have stories about times where you wish you would have spoken right speech because things didn't go well. So let's talk about this, because this is the important thing, especially with the Noble Eightfold Path. Everything that the Buddha teaches in the early texts is about how you act and live practically in the world, right? It all is very practical and pragmatic, right? This is how to act. This is how to train yourself, right? This is what the Noble Eightfold Path is. The Noble Eightfold Path is a toolbox, is a guide, right? Is the way to the ending of our suffering. So we can see it. We should reflect on this every once in a while. This is why I'm happy I got to chant the Noble Eightfold Path, because every once in a while, maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, if you consider yourself a Buddhist practitioner that follows the Noble Eightfold Path, you should read it. You should reflect until it's second nature in your mind, right? You should understand it. You should reflect on it, read it over and over again. And then once you understand, and once you at least intellectually have the Noble Eightfold Path in your mind, then you can start to experientially understand the Noble Eightfold Path, right? You can understand, okay, today, I'm in this situation. Let me have right mindfulness in this situation. Let me have right speech, right action, etc., right? So that we can try to practice skillfully and live skillfully. So we got a bunch of people on today. This is the largest Dhammapalooza in a while. So it shouldn't be a quiet chat. So anybody, let's talk about right. If you have any questions about right speech, right? You can ask me those questions. That's fine. So let's try to have a community discussion. That's what Dhammapalooza is. Dhammapalooza is not just me sitting here yapping for 2 hours. That's boring to me and to you. So I'm just scrolling the chat to see if I missed anything. Leandro says, I think in my 2 years following the path, this right speech might be the part that I struggle with the most. Sierra says, yeah, I do a ton of blah, blah speech. Yeah. Well, actually, this is, Leandro, this is actually something that I've heard from many people that write speech. And I also, to be honest with you, my speech is not the best either. Now, what I would say is my speech is not necessarily, my speech is very rarely like gruff or malicious or abusive, but I do tend to like to talk a lot. Right? Even if it's about Dhamma, sometimes there's still the right time and the right place to do it. Right? So I know how it is. You know, when I was, so some of you don't know too much. You know, it seems like some of you are pretty new, so you don't know. I've been a monk now about 5 years. Before, I've been a Buddhist, 2000, so almost 13 years I've been a Buddhist. About 16 years I've been a meditator. Right? So the majority of my time as a Buddhist so far was as a layperson, right? Who worked a very, very busy job, and who did all kinds of things. And so I have lots of experience of trying to live the Noble Eightfold Path in lay life. Right now I'm experiencing living the Noble Eightfold Path in monastic life, which is in many ways the same, but also in many ways different. But one of the things like I noticed when I started to really start to focus on right speech was like, so if I, at my job, my main career for almost 10 years was Child Protective Services. And so I worked in an office of like 100 people. And so we would have to talk, about different cases and get, connect and things like that. And so, there wasn't really a water cooler. I mean, there was a lunchroom, but I never really went in. I never really spent time like in any place where people congregated just to chat. Even as a Buddhist, before I was a Buddhist, it's just not my thing. But I would find myself in places where, so like I would go to somebody's desk to talk about something, or they would come to mine, and then another person would come, and then another person would come, and the business talk would go away. Then it would be talking about, I don't know, politics, or, either office politics or outside politics, that it would talk about, who's doing what with who, and did you hear about that person? And like, I can't stand this supervisor. And so basically it started out like important speech and it turned into junk, right? So what I started doing was being aware of that. When I was in that situation, I'd be very mindful. And the moment that it started turning to junk, that's when I'd be like, okay, job's done. I got to get back to work. See you later. Right? Sometimes though, you couldn't do that. You're like, either it was your desk that everybody was at, or, you had no easy escape route. So at that time, what I decided was, I figured, well, I can't really escape this, but I can just listen and be silent. And if there's a skillful thing that for me to add, then I'll add something skillful. But otherwise, I would just be silent, just listen, right? And so that was actually a very good practice for me, to start to really pay attention to, my conversations with people, to really investigate that. And, another aspect of that was, my job in going into people's houses, people who don't know me, I don't know them, often having to de-escalate a situation, being quite aware of what I was saying and what I was about to say actually became very important, right? Because I had the ability to make things worse or better, right? Depending on what I would say next, right? So really kind of having a bit of that kind of like high pressure situation actually kind of helped me in that regard, to reflect and to investigate. Oh, okay, hold on. How do I de-escalate this? How not escalate this, right? How do I make things better, not worse? So that was very important lessons for me in right speech. So let's go to the chat. I've noticed some people are talking. That's good. Leandra says, I'm a pretty confrontational person, and I've had several experiences where I had a hard time with situations where I hurt other people. Yeah, that's a tough one, but this is where mindfulness of our speech is important. See, I'm the opposite. I'm actually not. I'm an anti-confrontational person. I don't like conflict. Like, even if I have this experience where, like, even if I know I'm 100% in the right in what I have to say and what I do, if I've hurt somebody or they get angry, I actually feel bad about it. Like I'm being, like, my mind is chastising me like I did something wrong, right? And for years and years, I just kind of let that happen. But now these days, I'm like, okay, no, you're wrong. Like, I'm telling my mind, you're wrong, right? It's good that you feel this way because we might have a time where I do something really bad and it's true. But in this situation, no, you're wrong, right? So sometimes being confrontational is actually important. Sometimes it is the skillful thing to do, that you need to be confrontational. But again, it's how you confront, right? How you engage. That's important, right? That makes a huge difference. So don't, if you are a confrontational person, that's not automatically a bad thing. But so if you've had several experiences where you hurt other people, that's a lesson. Think about that and reflect on that. Okay, in this past situation, I did this and I confronted this person and then it hurt them or whatever, and it was not a good situation. Let me try to not do that again in the future. Let me think of a better way to handle this in the future, right? That's developing. That's growing. That's developing your wisdom and your insight and your skillfulness. Adriana says, I've noticed that a lot of right speech is realizing after I've spoken, that was unwholesome. There are times where I'm able to catch myself beforehand, but usually not till after. That's because you weren't mindful. That's just, so you recollect, I went into this situation, I wasn't mindful, I said this, but now only after do I realize this wasn't good, right? So you do exactly what I said to Leandra. You reflect, oh, okay, next time this didn't work out, let me try something different next time. let me say something different or talk at a different, instead of this time, let me wait and talk at that time, right? So you reflect on what you did, right? And how you do it better. Risa is saying, actually right now there is some division because one of my friends is going to one person here and they're talking, then going to the other person. Yeah. That is something, like, Risa, unfortunately, that people, like, you hear about that in high school and stuff a lot, right? Like, that's like a teenage thing. They're like, let's cause some trouble. Let's divide these people. But unfortunately, some people just don't grow out of that. If they see a benefit of dividing people, maybe they'll get the, they'll get the promotion, or they'll do this or they'll do that, then people are going to do it. And, in the end, though, it doesn't help anybody, right? It doesn't pay to do it, really. Maybe in the short term it does, but in the long term, people know when you do stuff like that, and you develop a reputation, right? And you do it to enough people are going to know, and it's going to hurt you in the end. It's not really the best thing to do that. But sometimes people just want to watch the world burn, right? As from that old Batman movie. Sometimes people just want to, it's like, if you watch them Real Housewives shows or whatever, like that Jersey Shore show, you like to see the train wrecks, right? You want to see people fighting and cat fighting and things like that. And, you know, in the end, though, it doesn't really help anybody. Yeah, Adriana says, I want to say right speech is the hardest. Adriana, you've definitely said right speech is the hardest in the past. I do remember that. Christine, right time to say things works wonders in relationship, especially with spouses. Yes, you know, this was actually a lesson that when the first time I read that sutta where the Buddha says, I say it at the, even though it's beneficial, it's truthful, all these things, I say it at the right time. That was like a real impactful thing. Like, whoa, yeah. Like, I've never thought about that before, ever. Like when I want to say something, but maybe I don't want to forget to say it later, or I don't want them, I want to say, I just blurb it out. And actually, one of the things that helped me train differently was when I was at the monastery, when I was at Bhavana Society, there's one of my favorite monks in all this world is Bhante Dhammaratana, right? And he's getting older, and he has, you know, he has memory stuff and, you know, stuff like that. And you can't really like if he's doing something, he's wholly focused on that. And that, like, if you try to say something, you know, either he's never going to remember it or you're going to jar him out of it. And so I learned to, like, I would want to say something just so that I don't forget later. And then it would go in and out, you know, in one ear and out the other. It wouldn't click. And I realized, okay, I'm not saying this at the right time. Let me find a right time, right? And once I did, then it would stick. And like, oh, okay. Right. So doing it at the right time is very important, right? And, you know, especially if it is something like that is likely to maybe cause some defensiveness for the person, like you said, with the spouse, right? Then yeah, at the right time might be not like right when they get back from work, right? Or right when, you know, after, you know, they got off the phone, or they, you know, they're agitated or whatever, and you just want to pile it in. Now this is what I have problems with, right? It's the right time is often the best to understand. Sergey says, I was wondering about always being honest. Sometimes the truth can hurt or be harmful. Yeah. But this is why, right? The truth, yes, truth hurts. And most of us, pretty much all of us, try to avoid many different kinds of truths in our day-to-day. But that's why we have to think about the other factors, right? We're going to have to tell the truth. But we want to say it beneficially. We want to say it kindly with a mind of metta at the right time, right? So if you have all these other factors, the truth might still be harmful or hurtful to the person. Not harmful, but hurtful to the person. But it will be a cushioned impact, right? It will be, if you do it in such a way that doesn't bring up their defenses, that they don't think that you're trying to attack them, but trying to help them, right? If you do it with all these other factors in mind, then there's a good chance that most likely it's going to go better, and they're going to be more willing to accept that truth, right? So that's a good, you know, it's very important to reflect on all the different factors besides just being truthful. Right? Because being truthful can be a weapon as well, right? You can use the truth as a weapon in a negative way as well, right? So it's not just the fact of telling the truth, but also these other factors. John says, what about when we intend to speak true, but we might have faulty memory? In the family I grew up in, there's a lot of problems with exaggeration and story enhancement to make a better story. Oh boy, I'm guilty of that. I exaggerate a lot. Yeah, exaggeration is, maybe it's the Italian thing. I don't know. But for me, I mean, but yeah, this is, well, this is why it's important. This is why it's important to not hold too hard to what we remember as the truth. Listen, not only our memory is faulty, but our perception is faulty. 2 seconds after we see something, what we saw could be very different than what we think we saw, can be very different than what actually happened. Right? So you shouldn't automatically trust your memory and your perception in these things, right? You should seek to try to talk to other people about a situation. Well, what did you see? Try to get different points of view to understand a situation better. Because that was a real impactful thing for me. Like when I realized how faulty my perception was, and I had prided myself for years of being very situationally aware, having strong perception, strong awareness, like being in the woods, like I've trained myself for these things, situational awareness, etc. But then my meditation brought me to the point where, like, even if you have the most highly tuned perception and awareness, your perception is still faulty, or can still be faulty, right? So you have to question it. Not just take it for granted. You have to question it. And how you question it often is by bouncing your perception off of somebody else. This is what I'm seeing. Is this what you're seeing? Right? And particularly if they're a wise person, right? This is why the Buddha always is talking about, like in the Kalama, the Kesaputtiya Sutta, where the Buddha says, don't go by reports, by what your teacher says, by what's written in a book, etc., but by what you see to be beneficial and skillful, and that is approved by the wise, right? So the Buddha is saying you have to reflect and understand for yourself, but then also to make sure it's true, to make sure it's accurate, bounce it off some people who you trust, who you think are wiser, more skillful, more understanding. Bounce it off of them, see what they say as well, right? So that's why it's important to have that kind of openness with your views and perceptions, to be able to and also to foster that with yourself and others, right? So if you have a group of people who are open that way, you're more likely as a group to be able to understand things as they are, to see with real perception, because you're trusting each other and you're open with each other and you understand, and you're trying to seek what is the actual real perception, not what we think might, what our faulty perception could be. Sierra says, I'm curious if you can expand more about harsh speech. I have a tendency to be brutally honest to those I'm close to, and I'm trying to gauge if it is too blunt, it becomes harsh speech. Let me give you the Buddha talking about harsh speech. I think this might be a good thing to understand. Right. So they speak harshly. They use the kind of words that are cruel, nasty, hurtful, offensive, bordering on anger, not leading to immersion. Right. So there you go. Right. Think about being brutally honest. Right. Brutally honest is one thing. How you're brutally honest is another, right? Are you speaking harshly? Are you using words that are cruel, nasty, hurtful, and offensive, right? That you're almost like angry when you do it. Right? Those are good guidelines, right? So that you can understand. being brutally honest is not necessarily a bad thing, but also taking into consideration those other factors will make a big difference. Leandro says, I had the same experience. Realizing the value of silence is priceless and joyful. Yes, the wonderful words. That might be one of the best words spoken on Dhammapalooza today. Realizing the value of silence is priceless and joyful. And that's why in about 10 minutes when we do our guided meditation, we can have a half hour of silence. It'll be nice. Well, I mean, I'll be talking every once in a while, but yeah. Hello, Jen. Welcome. Welcome, Gleam Tech. Oh, wait. Gleam. I don't think I saw you type, but now you said goodbye. So there you go. Goodbye. All right. Risa, 25 years out of high school and people are still doing this. Yep. Well, you know, people are people. Maher says, I sometimes regret after uttering so many words, never regret when I keep silent in a nonsense talks with others. Very good. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing to regret there. Sierra reports a good point. Risa says, I feel like I'm in a Maury Povich show or Jerry Springer. Although I don't think he's on anymore with all this drama. Leandro says, you're totally right. It's a whole process of finding out and reflecting. But what about situations when being truthful hurts the other person, but being silent would cause more suffering? That's an interesting aspect of right speech, isn't it? Buddha doesn't often talk about being silent causing suffering. I don't know if he does at all, to be honest with you. So that's yeah, think about that. That's interesting. It's a tough one. But being silent would cause more suffering. I think about the intention behind the silence. All right, what you'd have to reflect on what the intention is. All right, Sierra, have a good night. You'd have to think about what the intention behind the silence is. Right? And how long you wish to be silent. Sometimes you want to go to be silent so that you can reflect and think about what to do next. And sometimes there's silence because maybe it's not the right time. Like what comes to my mind is like situations like I dealt with like people who were in abusive relationships with their spouse, and you know how they had to deal with situations and things like that, and you know how sometimes even though it might not be the best thing in the long run, being silent for the short term was a skillful thing so that they could, you know, do what they needed to do, right? To not cause any more trouble, so that they could, you know, get out, you know, easier and things like that. That's an interesting question. I think it would depend on the situation. It really would. You know, it's one of those things where you'd have to see the situation and see, you know, oh, I was silent, but I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have spoke up. And then you reflect, well, if I spoke up, would it have done this? Would it have been skillful? Would it have been helped? You don't know. So it's an interesting question. I guess that's about all I can say. Adriana, leading to immersion. Yeah. Leading to jhanas, leading to samadhi, leading to deep states of concentration, tranquility, samatha, tranquility in the mind. When you get riled up and you speak abusively and it's bordering on anger, your mind is not calm. Your mind is not quiet. Your mind is not, so it's not conducive to these things, right? So that's what that means. All right, friends. The chat has gone quiet. Let's start to bring in some silence. I've been speaking a lot, so my throat is a little rough. Now is a good time for our guided meditation. So let's see, we have 14 people on the chat. And by the end of the guided meditation, we might have half that. Last week, we noticed how when we start the guided meditation, people start to drop, whether due to falling asleep or lateness or whatever, we don't know. But let's start our guided meditation, and whoever is with us at the end will be with us. So you can start by setting your body up in whatever posture you think is most conducive to your comfort and your stability. Close your eyes. Begin by bringing your awareness, focusing your attention on the bottom of your feet, your toes. Whenever you sit to meditate, it's good to spend some time scanning through the body for two reasons. The first being that it helps you transition from the busy and noisy external to the more subtle and refined internal. And the second being that this can help you to set your body up in a stable and comfortable position so that a half hour from now, your body can be in less pain and less imbalance. Right? So now is the time to spend scanning through your body and adjusting your posture as needed so that we can be as silent and immovable as possible during our meditation. So as we scan through the body, what you want to do, when I say to focus on a part of your body, what this means is to bring your awareness to whatever sensations that you can feel down there. If you are having trouble bringing your awareness to any sensation, then you can prompt it yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? So bring your awareness to your toes. It might help to wiggle them a little bit if you need to. What is the feeling of your toes pressing against the floor or mat? And bring that awareness to the rest of your foot. up through the ankle. And then through to your calves. What is the feeling of this lower part of your legs? Either pressed against the floor, or maybe the backs of them pressing against the chair. Bring your focus and awareness to those sensations. Now up to your knees. And your thighs. Check to see if there's any small imbalances in your posture or any small uncomfortable feeling. Now is the time to adjust your posture to alleviate those feelings. Something small now can turn into something much larger later on. Bring your awareness now to your hips and buttocks. What is the feeling of your buttocks pressed against the floor or a cushion? Are your hips balanced? Your lower body setting up a stable and comfortable foundation for the upper body. The pelvis in an alignment that allows the upper body to be balanced and comfortable. Whenever you're finished setting up your lower body into that comfortable and stable position, bring your awareness now up through the abdomen and the chest. Check the position of your spine to see if your upper body is leaning forwards or backwards. Your hip and pelvic positioning will have an impact on that. Bring your awareness to your shoulders. Make sure they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up tight. And then down through the elbows to the hands. Checking to see that your elbows and hands are in a comfortable position that supports the balance of the upper body and not making the upper body lean or slouch. And then finally, bring your awareness to the head. Checking the balance of the head, that you're not leaning or slouching too far forward or backwards or to the side. When your lower body is set up as a firm and balanced foundation, the spine stays in its natural curvature, and the head rests comfortably on the upper body with the chin parallel to the ground. And when you're ready, let go of the body and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, we do not wish to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe and investigate the breath. Watch as this body breathes in. Watch as it breathes out. You may find most prominent the feeling of the air entering and exiting the nostrils at the nose. If so, you can put your awareness there. If you have trouble with that, you might feel most prominent the rise and fall of the chest. You can put your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic understanding that this body is breathing in and breathing out. Follow the breath in and out. Friends, we come to this meditation with many responsibilities and burdens, worries and fears about family and friends, work and school, society. Many things that may seek to come to your mind as you practice. For the time of this meditation, we practice laying down our burdens, letting go. Just as the mighty Atlas holds the world on his shoulders, so too do we each hold our world on our shoulders, a heavy burden. Lay that burden down. There'll be plenty of time to pick it up later. But for now, let go and follow the breath. As you're following the breath, your mind will get distracted. Thoughts will take you to faraway places. Things happening outside will draw your attention. And you will be taken away from your object. This is normal. You did not fail or make a mistake. This is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Whenever you get distracted, and then you start to notice that you've been distracted, first acknowledge it. Come to full mindfulness that you have been taken away from your breath. Then practice letting go of that distraction and return to the breath. The breath is our home. It's always there waiting for us whenever we wish to visit. When we practice, the goal is always to come back home every time we've been distracted. Return to the breath. Acknowledge, let go, and return. By letting go, we mean that you don't want to be angry and push it away, nor do you want to get attached to it and think more about it. Simply to not give it any energy, let it go as it came, and return to the breath. Over and over again, acknowledge, let go, and return. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and peaceful or not? As you follow the breath and your mind becomes more tranquil and peaceful, You may begin to notice further characteristics of the breath you didn't see before. How the breath changes. Sometimes the breath is long and deep. Sometimes short and shallow. Try to investigate these further characteristics of the breath, to see the breath more deeply, in subtle and refined ways, how it is changing. All right, friends. Slowly start to come back to the external, opening your eyes, becoming aware of the room that you're in. No, Adriana, it wasn't an actual bell. It was my phone. Was the first one too loud? I don't have a bell here. There's no bells. See? Just candles and things. And as predicted, we went from like 16 to 9. It's actually not too bad. 9 people is not too bad. With a half hour left, I think some people did a Mahamogalana and fell asleep. Fell asleep and disconnected. All right. So, with our last half hour, if there's any questions, anything you'd like me to talk about, feel free to anything you'd like to discuss in the chat, we can discuss. I don't know who's left because only Adriana's talking. Secret Spy Records. I wasn't prepared for that. Are you talking about the first bell that was probably a bit too loud and close to the mic? Maybe a little bit jarring. Apologies for that. Yeah. Well, you know what we can do? I think last Dhammapalooza, the last, 20 minutes or so, what I did was read from the verses in the Samyuta Nikaya. And I think maybe we can do that. Just have some nice, chill, light verses to end the night with. Right, some good Dhamma before bed. So we are on Samyuta Nikaya, Connected Discourses, number 10. So we started from number 1, the first sutta in the Samyuta Nikaya. Now we're on number 10. That's Savatthi, standing to one side. That Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Those who dwell deep in the forest, peaceful, leading the holy life, eating but a single meal a day, why is their complexion so serene? They do not sorrow, so the Buddha replies, they do not sorrow over the past, nor do they hanker for the future. They maintain themselves with what is present. Hence their complexion is so serene. Through hankering for the future and sorrowing over the past, fools dry up and wither away, like a green reed cut down. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Spending too much time in the past and the future, people wither away. Too much anxiety, too much agitation, too much worry in the past and the future, withering away. Now, 11, Nanda. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. The bhikkhu said this. Once in the past, bhikkhus, a certain devata of the Tavatimsa host was reveling in Nanda Grove, supplied and endowed with the 5 cords of celestial sensual pleasure, accompanied by a retinue of celestial nymphs. On that occasion, he spoke this verse. They do not know bliss, those who have not seen Nanda, the abode of the glorious male devas, belonging to the host of 30. So this deva is glorying in the heavens, glorying in this the sensual pleasures, right? In this way, they have the deva sensual pleasures, right? And then the Buddha. Oh wait, when this was said, bhikkhus, a certain devata replied to that devata in verse. Don't you know, fool? Don't you know, you fool? The bala, right? We talked about the bala a lot yesterday morning. If you watched that stream, don't you know, you fool, that maxim of the Arahants, impermanent are all formations. Their nature is to arise and vanish. Having arisen, they then must cease. Blissful is it when they subside. So this was a wise deva. This deva was a practitioner of the Dhamma, and he went to this other deva. Didn't even need the Buddha. We had another deva that time. All right. Number 12, delight. At Savatthi, standing to one side, that devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. One who has sons delights in sons. One with cattle delights in cattle. Acquisitions truly are a man's delight. Without acquisitions, one does not delight. Again, we'll see what the Buddha has to say about that. Huh? The Buddha says, one who has sons sorrows over sons. One with cattle sorrows over cattle. Acquisitions truly are a man's sorrows. Without acquisitions, one does not sorrow. Right. But we don't see that though. With the in the Dhammapada it says what we see as suffering, the noble ones see as bliss. Such is the way. Okay. All right. So at Savatthi, number 13, none equal to that for a son. This devata spoke the verse in the presence of the Blessed One. There is no affection like that for a son. No wealth equal to cattle. There is no light like the sun. Among the waters, the ocean is supreme. Let's see what the Buddha has to say. There is no affection like that for oneself. No wealth equal to grain. There is no light like wisdom. Among the waters, rain is supreme. I like that one. That's an interesting one. Among the waters, rain is supreme. Because rain, right? The ocean doesn't do what? The ocean doesn't help you grow crops, right? Rain helps you grow crops. There is no wealth equal to grain, right? So all the wealth in the world is not as important as keeping yourself alive by eating. There is no light like wisdom. Wonderful. Number 14, the Chatya. The Chatya is the second group of the four castes, C-A-S-T-E, right? The four castes in the caste system of India. Chatyas are the rulers and the warriors, right? Right below the Brahmins, who are the priests. So the Khattiya. The Khattiya is the best of bipeds. The ox, the best of quadrupeds. A maiden is the best of wives. The firstborn, the best of sons. Okay, so I guess this doesn't have all of the extras, right? It doesn't go into the Buddhist then says this. This is the interesting thing about the Samyuta Nikaya, which is one of the reasons why it is considered to be the oldest and most least fiddled with, right? Least played with. And that is because you have suttas like this where there is no Buddha says this, Devas say this, This is where it's at. It's simply just the verses, right? And so the response is, the Buddha is the best of bipeds, a steed the best of quadrupeds, an obedient woman the best of wives. I'm not going to touch that. And a dutiful boy the best of sons. There you go. All right. Number 15, murmuring. When the noon hour sets in and the birds have settled down, the mighty forest itself murmurs, how fearful that appears to me. Ah, this might well be from Mahakassapa. When the noon hour sets in and the birds have settled down, the mighty forest itself murmurs, how delightful that appears to me. The delightful forest. Number 16, drowsiness and lethargy. Drowsiness, lethargy, and lazy stretching, discontent, torpor after meals. Because of this, here among beings, the noble path does not appear. Drowsiness, lethargy, lazy stretching, discontent, torpor after meals. When one dispels this with energy, the noble path is cleared. Right? This is one of the things that I learned when I was at the monastery. Since I became a monk, one of the biggest issues I have is with energy. Right? Not lacking energy, always least amount of energy. And one of the things I noticed was, just as the Buddha says here, right? After lunch, I'm going to go take a nap, right? But no, you know the best way to dispel that after lunch? Take a walk, right? If I took a walk after lunch, then that afternoon tiredness goes away, right? So dispel lethargy with energy. Take a walk. Number 17, difficult to practice. The ascetic life is hard to practice and hard for the inept to endure. For many are the obstructions there in which the fool flounders. Founders. I think that might be supposed to be flounders. How many days can one practice the ascetic life if one does not rein in one's mind? One would flounder with each step under the control of one's intentions. Drawing in the mind's thoughts as a tortoise draws its limbs into its shell, independent, not harassing others, fully quenched, a bhikkhu would not blame anyone. Oh, good morning from Southeast Asia. Whereabouts? What country, Chris? I'm wondering how all of a sudden people are finding this live stream. It's quite interesting how many new people showed up today from various different countries. Okay, so we're pretty much, Chris, at the end of our Dhammapalooza. Oh, Cambodia. Oh, wonderful. Welcome. We only have about 15 minutes left. So, but if you check my channel, right, you'll be able to see the recording of this at a time that's good for you. You get to see the rest of it. Right now, we're just reading through some verses, having a very light, quiet last couple of minutes. Number 18, a sense of shame. Is there a person somewhere in the world who is restrained by sense of shame, one who draws back from blame, as a good horse does from the whip. Few are those restrained by a sense of shame. Boy, this is 2,600 years ago. This is before the internet. This is even back then. Few people are a sense of shame. Few are those restrained by a sense of shame who fare always mindful. Few, having reached the end of suffering, fare evenly amidst the uneven. "19. A little hut. Do you have a little hut? Or don't you have a little hut? Don't you have a little nest? Don't you have any lines extended? Are you free from bondage? Surely I have no little hut. Surely I have no little nest. Surely I have no lines extended. Surely I'm free from bondage. What do you think I call a little hut? What do you think I call a little nest? What do you think I call lines extended? What do you think I call bondage? It's a mother that you call a little hut. It's a wife that you call a little nest. Sons that you call lines extended. Craving that you tell me is bondage. It's good that you have no little hut. Good that you have no little nest. Good that you have no lines extended. Good that you are free from bondage." So obviously this is talking about a awakened being who is a monk, who is a monastic. No connections, no bondage to the world. Number 20, Samyuta. "Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the hot springs park. Then the Venerable Samyuta, having arisen at the first flush of dawn, went to the hot springs to bathe. Having bathed in the hot springs and come back out, he stood in one robe drying his limbs. Then when the night had advanced, a certain Devata of stunning beauty, illuminating the entire hot springs, approached the Venerable Samyuta. Having approached, she stood in the air and addressed the Venerable Samyuta in verse. Without having enjoyed, you seek alms, Bhikkhu. You don't seek alms after you've enjoyed. First enjoy, Bhikkhu, then seek alms. Don't let the time pass you by." The response: "I do not know what the time might be. The time is hidden and cannot be seen. Hence, without enjoying, I seek alms. Don't let the time pass you by." So, okay, the next lines explain what this means. So, enjoy first, then seek alms essentially means you're young, enjoy sensual pleasures. When you get older, then you go for alms, then be a mendicant, right? So, then that Devata alighted on the earth and said to the Venerable Samyuta, "You have gone forth while young, Bhikkhu, a lad with black hair, endowed with the blessing of youth, in the prime of life, without having dallied with sensual pleasures. Enjoy human sensual pleasures, Bhikkhu. Do not abandon what is directly visible in order to pursue what takes time." That's an interesting line, right? Do not abandon what is directly visible in order to pursue what takes time. What is that? That's called delayed gratification, right? We all have to practice some form of delayed gratification, even though we're really, really bad at it. I know I am, right? It's much harder to delay gratification, to have an idea, something far in the future. This is the goal I'm looking for, right? And you don't see the results of that goal just yet. That's hard, right? To keep going with that, right? It's much easier to just, I'll just, take it now, right? That's like they have these like, I forgot what the test is called, but the test that, they'll have like little toddlers, like 2, 3, 4-year-old kids, and they'll come in and they'll put a marshmallow right in front of the kid. And they'll say, you can have this one marshmallow now, but if you wait 10 minutes, you can have 3 marshmallows, right? And then they leave, right? And then like they have recordings of the kids and they're like struggling. They're like, should I wait 10 minutes or should I just eat this marshmallow right now? Right? And that's no different for us as adults, right? That delayed gratification is very, very hard. Yeah, it's cute. Look up the marshmallow experiments with the kids. Whoa, the lights just blinked. Did you guys see a little flicker? That was interesting. Hopefully New York City stays on, at least for the next 10 minutes. Okay, so do not abandon what is directly visible in order to pursue what takes time. I have not abandoned what is directly visible, friend, in order to pursue what takes time. I have abandoned what takes time in order to pursue what is directly visible. There's that whole the wise ones see bliss. What the regular people see as suffering, right? He throws it. He totally reverses it. I abandon what it takes time in order to pursue what is directly visible. For the Blessed One, friend, has stated that sensual pleasures are time-consuming, full of suffering, full of despair, and the danger in them is still greater. While this Dhamma is directly visible, now these are the qualities of the Dhamma. Directly visible, unaffected by time, immediate. Calling, inviting one to come and see, applicable to be personally experienced by the wise. The Dhamma. But how is it, Bhikkhu, that the Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures are time-consuming, full of suffering, full of despair, and danger in them is still greater? How is it that the Dhamma is directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable to be personally experienced by the wise? I am newly ordained, friend, not long gone forth, just recently come to this Dhamma in discipline. I cannot explain it in detail, but that Blessed One, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, is dwelling at Rajagaha in the hot springs park. Approach that Blessed One and ask him about this matter. As he explains it to you, so you should remember it. It isn't easy for us to approach that Blessed One, Bhikkhu, as he is surrounded by other devatas of greater influence. If you would approach him and ask him about this matter, we will come along too in order to hear that Dhamma. These poor devas, there's other devas all around. They're all hogging the space around the Buddha, so the regular devas can't hear. Right? Very well, friend, the Venerable Samyuta, he replied. Then he approached the Blessed One, having paid homage, sat down to one side, and reported his entire discussion with the Devatas, etc., etc. If that Devata statement is true, Venerable Sir, then the Devata should be close by. When this was said, the Devata said to the Venerable Samyuta, ask Bhikkhu, for I have arrived. Then the Blessed One addressed that Devata in verse. Beings who perceive what can be expressed become established in what can be expressed, not fully understanding what can be expressed. They come under the yoke of death, of Mara. But having fully understood what can be expressed, one does not conceive one who expresses. For that does not exist for him, by which one could describe him. If you understand, spirit, speak up. I do not understand in detail, Venerable Sir, the meaning of what was stated in brief by the Blessed One, Please, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One explain it to me in such a way that I might understand in detail the meaning of what he stated in brief. This is one of the most important things. One who conceives, I am equal to, I am better than, or I am worse than, might on that account engage in disputes. But one not shaken in the three discriminations does not think I am equal or better. All right, this is an interesting one, right? Our time is coming to an end, so I can't talk too much, but what the three discriminations? I am better than, I am worse than, I am equal to, right? We think that we should say like, we're all equal, right? But in this Dhamma that the Buddha is teaching, if you are making such a distinction, then you are doing so at the basis of some kind of permanent soul or self, right? So the Buddha is saying here, one who lets go of the one who discriminates, the one who decides, right? So this is talking about not self, right? If you see not self, then there is no judging, there is no comparing. Because there's nothing to compare to. In this case too, Venerable Sir, I do not understand in detail. Let the Blessed One explain it to me in such a way that I might understand in detail the meaning of what he stated in brief. The Blessed One, he abandoned reckoning, did not assume conceit. So that's what they're called, the three conceits. That's another way to translate it, right? This is a conceit. The conceit also, I am. That is the last conceit to be abandoned. Abandoning the conceit, I am, is bliss. He has abandoned reckoning, did not assume conceit. He cuts off craving here for name and form. Through devas and humans, those devas and humans search for him here and beyond in heavens and all abodes. They do not find one whose knots are cut. The one untroubled, free from longing. If you understand, spirits, speak up. I understand in detail, Venerable Sir, the meaning of what was stated in brief by the Blessed One. One should do no evil in all the world, not by speech, mind, or body. Having abandoned sense pleasures, mindful and clearly comprehending, one should not pursue a course that is painful and harmful. And with that, friends, we come to the end of our Dhammapalooza. We've had a wonderful 2 hours of Dhamma. And if you haven't already, please do the little subscribe and click the like and click the bell and do all that stuff to help the channel. And also, if you subscribe and the email notifications, then when I go live, it'll send an email to you. I also do currently every morning except for Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. I'm doing a half-hour monastery experience. So it's precepts, chanting, and a little Dhamma talk. So that's every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern American, because that's where I'm at. I'm in New York City currently, right? And then just keep an eye out for other things. Maybe I'll get some other videos going here, like Ask Abante and stuff like that. But anyways, friend, let's end with our merits as we do. So first we'll do it in the Pali and then the English. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, sokha patta chani sokha, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, ettavata cha mehi sampatang punna sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumatta deva naga mahiddhika, punyang tang anumoditva chirang rakkantu lokasasanang. So the English. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share in this merit that we've thus acquired. for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Have a good night or a morning, depending on where you are. South America, Southeast Asia, all the different places, wherever you are. And I will see you hopefully next week. Every Monday, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern American to 10 p.m. Eastern American. Until next time, friends, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy, practice well, and be well.